Hi, I'm Clarissa Mall, producer and moderator of the Bulletin. Here's a short clip from one of our segments in this week's episode.
Elizabeth Neumann, welcome to the Bulletin.
Thanks for letting me join you, Mike. It's a great joy. I love you guys.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to have you back. And we're living in an interesting moment right now. Trump 2.0 is about to start. We're recording this on January 15th. This will air a little later. But yeah, we're looking down, sort of staring down the barrel of 4 more years of Trump. In a lot of ways, it feels very different than 2016. It feels like some of the cultural winds are different. The coalition around Trump is different. I'm wondering, as you were looking at this, given the work that you've done, the writing you've done around national security and domestic violence or domestic terror and themes of like Christian nationalism and that kind of thing, what do you see? Where do things stand right now?
It's a good question. I have a lot of concerns about the new administration. There will most certainly be fewer people with government experience, fewer people with subject matter expertise in senior leadership positions. And, your government does important work, mostly behind the scenes, because it's more effective when it's behind the scenes. And when you don't have qualified individuals leading that work, bad decisions can be made, things get delayed. This administration is wanting to do, or they're forecasting that they want to do some things that, as a conservative, I might normally be very excited to hear, like we want to make government more efficient, or we want to finally address the massive debt that we have. Entitlement reforms desperately need to be addressed. That cliff is coming, whether we want to talk about it or not. And that cliff has massive implications for national security, for the services that we expect the government to provide. So we have some very serious things as a country we need to address. And when you don't have experience, it's not that, there's some good having outsiders come in and take a fresh look at things, and innovation's a healthy thing. And certainly when I served in 2017 through 2020 in the first Trump administration, there was a slight optimism. Maybe this can be that disruptive influence in government, and maybe this could be healthy. And there are some pockets, if you look at across different topic areas, where that healthy disruption did occur, and there are some successes that you can point to in the first term of the Trump administration. But there were a lot more disruptive efforts that were not productive, were harmful both to our relationships overseas, as well as harmful to just being a government that serves the American people effectively and efficiently using taxpayer dollars. So I just don't think that with less expertise, but some of the same tendencies towards chaos, that is his governing model. He talks about it quite openly. He likes having advisors fight. He likes having people play the stab you in the back game. That is his leadership model. He's quite... He owns it. It's not, nobody would say I'm besmirching his character when he thinks that's a good thing, to run it like a wrestling match or like a boxing match. And it didn't work well in the first administration. There were a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of consequences, many of which I don't feel like the American public really saw. But some of the ones we did see, there was a lot of mismanagement at the beginning of COVID. And if you had individuals with more experience, most of them had been fired by that point, running the ship, we probably could have handled the early days of COVID better, resulting in less loss of life, getting people back to work and back to school faster. And that unfortunately did not happen because we were dealing with both inexperience and constant chaos. So that chaotic model has not proven to work. I don't think it's likely to work in the second term.
Well, you mentioned something that I've been thinking a lot about because, you mentioned that by the end of his term, there were a lot fewer sort of quote unquote adults in the room, right? That's not, you didn't use that language, but that's kind of, people have made note of that a lot, that there was this idea, there was this notion in 2016 that, there would be adults in the room, there would be these mature, experienced people who understood governance and would kind of temper the chaos. It seems to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, it seems to me that we're starting at a place where there are even fewer adults in the room at the beginning of this term than there were at the beginning of 2016.
Yes, I think the two that I'm watching are Susie Wiles, the incoming chief of staff who ran his campaign. She is quite impressive. I have never seen somebody run as disciplined a ship around Trump as she has managed to do. So somewhat optimistic she might be able to constrain some of the worst parts of the chaos. Marco Rubio, he's an adult. He knows foreign policy. He's served a long time in the Senate. So that there are two. There are other people that have, practical subject matter knowledge. He's recruited people in at, Treasury and at Energy who actually, know those fields, and they'll have to learn government. And as long as they're allowed to have competent people as their deputies or chiefs of staff, you can go a long way with that. But yes, I am concerned. The nominees we've seen, the initial nominee at the Department of Justice, certainly the nominee at FBI, Kash Patel, the DNI, the Department of Defense, they are all individuals that appear to have been selected for the fact that they're good on camera with the MAGA world. They say bombastic things. They like to be a little provocative, and while I understand provocative sells, it makes you a good entertainer. It's not great for executing and implementing. It's not good for governing. So maybe some of these people will calibrate, but certainly there are others that have demonstrated in the past, and either like in the case of Kash Patel, he previously served. I haven't heard of anybody that had served directly with him who is comfortable with that selection. So there will be some pretty significant consequences when those are the people in the room and then in the Situation Room advising the president, making decisions. That will have, and the lone voice is Marco Rubio, maybe tempering things like that. That's going to drastically affect the way that we conduct our foreign policy and our military.
Yeah. How quickly does he become, quote unquote, little Marco, and the outlier, and Trump has had no problem belittling him, mocking him, attacking him in the past. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, you published a book last year, and it's a disturbing read. It's a powerful read, Kingdom of Rage. And I'm curious in the mix of all of this. So that book was about some of the ways that a certain, how should I put this, a certain strand of right-wing evangelicalism has been increasingly radicalized, and it's kind of joined forces with elements of American culture that were already much more radical. And you're sounding the alarm in that book. I'm curious, here we are, the book came out in April, so we're 9 months later. Trump has been reelected since then. How are you feeling about what you saw as you were writing that book and what the alarms you were trying to sort of raise? How are you feeling as this presidency comes back into power?
Yeah, the subtitle of the book is The Rise of Christian Extremism and the Path Back to Peace. And one of the things that has shifted since I wrote that subtitle, that I actually find kind of like a nice way to pose the problem we're facing, is that even the word extremism, which for 20 years meant a very specific thing, And I write in the book that my definition of extremism is when an in-group perceives a threat to their success or survival by an out-group and determines that the only possible path forward is some form of hostile action. So it's not just that you have an us-them construct. It's not just that you are highly polarized. It's that in that polarization, you come to believe that the only solution is some form of hostile action. And hostile action's on a spectrum. There is a non-criminal space of hostile action. Therefore, law enforcement can't police it. But it's bullying, harassment, intimidation, and threats. And then you move into the criminal space, hate crimes, vandalism, up to terrorism, and then genocide is the far end of that spectrum. This is maybe an academic way to look at it, but that's how my field, we are both practitioners and academics. We're trying to understand the drivers behind why people go and fly planes into buildings. Why does somebody drive a car down Bourbon Street on January 1st? And as you're precise with your definitions, then you can start to pick apart different elements of that and start to understand radicalization processes. And most importantly, what do we do about it? That really is the heart of this book, is how do we stop the violence? Like, we are in, and I haven't checked the latest statistics, but up through 2022, we were increasing our levels of violence in this country every year for a period of 10 years. And we get really numb to it, Mike. Like, you just kind of are like, oh, it's another school shooting. But if you remember Columbine, if you were old enough to remember Columbine, I was just devastated. I remember Newtown, Connecticut, the Sandy Hook. I was on the floor. I had a newborn at that time, and I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't even send my kid to kindergarten without being worried about their safety now. Now it happens, and we appropriately are sad, but it just is so frequent that we just kind of think that we have to live with it. And the good news of the book is that we've been studying extremism and targeted violence, people who commit these acts who aren't necessarily affiliated with a specific grievance. We've studied it for 20 years. We actually understand how somebody gets to that point, which means we can intervene and help them earlier and disrupt that process, that pathway to violence.
Listen to the full episode wherever podcasts are found.